Hi, this is Rich Harrington, and you are listening to Photofocus Episode 111, and I am joined by my co-host this week, Scott Bourne.
Hey, how's it going, Rich?
Good, good. Scott, you just got back from a fun trip. We'll talk about that in a second, but we've both had a chance to play with some new gear lately, and I know our audience loves hearing about some of the new toys and things coming out. Let's start with something that could benefit just about everybody, and that is a new flash. You had a chance to play with some new ones, and what'd you find out?
Yeah, I took 11 flashes to Arizona altogether to photograph hummingbirds. I took 7 Canon flashes and 4 Quantum turbo flashes, and I'll break it down into Canon versus Quantum. Of the Canon flashes, I had 5 of the 580 EX2s and 2 of the brand new 600s. And I'll say that the 600s perform very well. They automatically zoom now all the way to 200 millimeters, which is kind of cool. Allegedly, they're easier to use.
Now, by allegedly did you find them harder to use because they were brand new, or did they
I found them much harder to use. Okay. It's like all this new gear. It's like the D800 and the D4 from Nikon are perfect examples. They moved all the buttons, menus, and things that I'm used to. Now I can't use either camera worth a daggone. So, same with the 600. I don't have any idea how to operate it, but the idea is that eventually these soft menus that they've created will let you have a lot more control. I highly recommend reading 3 or 4 books on how to use the 600 to get the most out of it. But that's not the real story. The real story is I quit using the Canon flashes in favor of the Quantum turbos because they're just that much better.
Now, give people a comparison here. Obviously, set some price points here and what you're looking at for each of these type of flashes.
Well, when it comes to the flash itself, it's not bad. The Quantums are more expensive. They're probably $50 to $100 more expensive than the top-line Canon. The problem is the battery. The Quantums require an external battery pack. You have to have one battery pack per 2 flashes. So it's probably double the money, to be honest, but it's double the flash. I mean, the recycle times are instant compared to the Canon. They have a little built-in cone reflector, which makes the light source tremendously larger compared to the Canon. So it doesn't have to be as exact. You kind of point it in the general direction of the subject, it's going to work, compared to the Canon needs to be pretty precise.
Now, you were dealing with this, and it makes sense, obviously. We're going to talk to the specifics about shooting hummingbirds, but this is a very challenging animal to shoot, so having lots of flash is important. Who else would benefit from, the Quantum's ability to,
Anybody that needs a fast recycle time, wedding shooters, people that are doing school portraits. If you need fast recycle times, that's where the Quantums come in. They also, everybody knows that the bigger the light source, the softer the light. So it's a prettier light. It's a sweeter light. It's like everything else, though. Speed costs money. How fast can you afford to go? And it's about double. But I am done with the Canon flashes. Personally, I'm switching everything over to the TD5s and the battery packs. I just fell in love with them on this shoot, Rich. I mean, they do make some shoe-mounted versions with TTL capability. I didn't test those because I didn't need TTL. I was doing everything manual, the old-fashioned way, computing guide numbers and using math and all kinds of hard stuff.
You're scaring people now, Scott.
I know. There's a thing called a guide number. Learn it. They were really easy to use. And photographing hummingbirds, you need a lot of flash because the wings beat 50 times per second. So we're trying to freeze them in action. So people are like, well, the 250th of a second, that's the sync speed. How's that going to work? Well, that doesn't really matter because the flash duration is about 10,000th of a second, and that's what stops the motion. They're both Canon and Quantum make good stuff, but I have to say on this test, the Quantum won out. For those with the budget, I would go with the Quantum.
Okay, well that makes sense. And Quantum, any limitations for what type of camera systems they support?
I think pretty much everything.
Okay. So as long and they have you also have the remote function with them as well, right? You can trigger remotely if you need to.
You can, yeah. There's some built-in triggers, etc.
Okay. All right. Well, we've been talking a little bit about it around it. Let's talk about your hummingbird shoot. So you decided to head on off and head to the desert and track down the world's most difficult animal to shoot.
Yeah, try to imagine something to get a penny out of your pocket and put in your hand. Now, the world's heaviest hummingbird weighs 2 pennies. Most weigh between 1 and 2 pennies. That's how small they are. The physical body of the bird's about an inch, but in ornithological terms, they're measured from beak to tail, which makes them about 3 inches long. And they're the only bird in the world that flies backwards. And let me tell you something. I've done some stuff in my life that's hard. Multiply that by 82 kabillion, and that's how hard this is.
So you were just feeling that life wasn't challenging enough, or was this on your bucket list, Scott? Just something you had to try and
no,
nail?
I'm a sadist, masochist, whatever you call it. I'd never done it. I thought this is something I need to add to my portfolio. I got some great shots, but the work, the hours of work you have to put in to get one hummingbird shot that's really good, it's exponentially more than to get an eagle, for instance.
So let's talk about that. You had a nice breakdown of your setup while over on the Photofocus site. What were some of the things you learned? Obviously, this is a fast-moving subject. For those, obviously not everyone can shoot hummingbirds, but what are some lessons you learned from this for dealing with fast-moving subjects that really stand out?
Well, you want to have your background set up. So we had paper backgrounds that offered a nice bokeh. And you want to make sure that you have your focusing point set with something that's moving fast. And the subject distance background is kind of tricky. That requires a little practice. With hummingbirds in particular, they have incredible memories. They can memorize where a hummingbird feeder is that they found 4 years ago. So the deal is you got to get there early, which is part of the problem. You have to actually go 2-3 days early and set the feeders up where you want to shoot and let the hummingbirds get used to coming into them.
I imagine anything that's small is probably pretty skittish.
Well, they are skittish at first, and I'll say this: birds in general. All my life, I've had to defend against using flash on birds. Everyone says, "Oh, it hurts the birds." It doesn't. When it comes to hummingbirds, that's the only bird the flash is an issue. There's a few species that are scared by the flash, and all hummingbirds can be endangered by the flash if they're sitting on a nest because they overheat. Literally, they run so close to the edge that the light from the flash can kill them.
Wow.
So we didn't use any flash for nesting birds. But the bottom line is you got to get the feeders in there early, then you got to get the birds used to the feeders, then you got to slowly remove a few of the feeders so you get down to the one you want them to hit. Then you got to deal with territorial hummingbirds, which I had not known anything about until this trip. So they finally get to where they're coming in. Then one hummingbird decides he's going to be boss of this particular feeder, and he won't let any other birds come there. So the only time he comes there is when he's hungry. So you sit there for an hour and then you get a picture. Then you sit there for an hour and you get another picture.
And that hummingbird was particularly ugly, right? Bad complexion.
Oh, yeah, of course. It was the one with the bad feathers and everything else. But no, it was cool. It was a good test equipment. And here's the surprising thing. I did the whole shoot, Rich, not with the camera you would expect me to use. I've got all these high-speed cameras. I used a good old 5D Mark III, the new 5D Mark III full-frame camera, which has only 6 frames a second, and it was enough to get these hummingbirds, particularly because of the good autofocus system in the new 5D Mark III. If you can shoot hummingbirds with a 5D Mark III, you can shoot anything with it.
Cool. So that's definitely a plus on that camera. Anything else stand out? Lessons learned from this trip?
Patience, patience, patience.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I've picked up in talking with you on this, that, making sure you're putting the time into the scout and the setup and the test shoot. You definitely, I saw some of your behind the scenes photos. You had a dummy bird in place. You were going through everything. I mean, you must have rehearsed this shot, 50, 600 times before the birds finally showed up.
Yeah, people see my bird stuff and they go, oh, he just wandered around and found a bird and took its picture. It doesn't quite work like that. There's research. You have to study the ornithology. You have to know where the birds are going to be. When they're going to be there is key. In this particular case, we were in Madera Canyon in Arizona, about 80 miles from Nogales, Mexico. This is a particularly right place for hummingbirds this time of year. We shot 4 or 5 different species. It's a lot of work like anything else, though. And I would say, Rich, it doesn't matter whether you photograph pets or people or birds or buildings. The more research you do, the better off you are. The more you know your subject, the better off you are. And the more patient you are waiting for that right shot, the better you're going to get. But I mean, none of this stuff is as easy as it looks. But that's what being a pro is all about. You're supposed to make it look easy. Yeah,
well, that's one of the things I enjoy is going back to a place I've shot before and getting a chance to revisit and, learn from it and see what I can find there. I had that recently. I got to go back to the Valley of Fire just 2 days in a row. Pro. I had done a location scout, and then I went back the next day to shoot. And it was amazing how many things, that seeing the day before, that pre-production really panned out the next day with getting the shots I wanted, because I knew exactly where I wanted to be at what time and have the gear set up. So I was able to walk through, map out where I was expecting the sun to be, and then really just get some great shots. I was doing a time-lapse shoot, and I managed to walk away with 10 good time lapses from an afternoon of shooting, and all because I had scouted out the locations. I knew exactly where I wanted to be in relation to the sun position, and we lucked out and had good cloud cover. But can't emphasize enough the site survey of the pre-production. Now, let's talk a little bit about gear. Before we get down to the 5D Mark III, I've been playing with the new Olympus, the OMD EM5, which is a micro four thirds camera. And this is a format that I hadn't played with much before. The four thirds are sort of between a point and shoot and a DSLR. So, Scott, do you ever play with this type of camera? Not necessarily the Olympus, but four thirds type camera lenses?
Actually, I have 3 of the Olympus EP3 micro four thirds cameras. I love them. My only concern about them as a pro is that they don't really offer the kind of support that Canon and Nikon do with repair and such. So if your camera goes down, you could be stuck for a while. But performance of these cameras is amazing, and some of the lenses are really good. Now, I don't have any experience with that particular camera. Why don't you tell us?
Yeah, this one's kind of like the big brother to the Pen series. The Pen series cameras were well received, and this is sort of a step up. So the base camera is about $1,000 for the body, and it'll work with a lot of the same lenses and features for that, but it has 2 command dials and complete manual controls. I was going through the menu for this camera looking at some of the built-in options, and I was getting jealous for some of my other cameras at how well it was thought out. I mean, exposure compensation, bracketing up to seven brackets, all sorts of things in here. 2 command dials, being able to step through, and then crazy things that I never thought I'd want on a DSLR type camera. And obviously this isn't a DSLR, but similar form factor. A touch screen to set my focus point. Like if I'm in live view mode, just like you would on your iPhone, touch to set the focus point. I was like, you know what? That is actually easier than having to keep pushing this command dial to go on over. I'm just like, right there. Ooh, right there.
I think some of the Panasonic Micro Four Thirds do that too.
Yeah, I don't think it's unique. But, those are, I was just seeing things. This was kind of like, it was kind of like a guilty pleasure. It was the collision of everything I like about shooting on my iPhone with everything I like shooting on a DSLR. There was flexibility with lenses. I mean, I had lenses that went down to 2.8 for speed, great low light performance. It goes up to 25,000 ISO. Obviously, that's pushing it a bit, but noise reduction, good battery life. They made a little battery grip for it that lets you have 2 batteries and, makes it a little bit easier on the hands for someone like me with bigger hands. But it was just a nice system. And I could see for enthusiasts or tourists sort of having that in your hands. I mean, 9 frames per second burst mode, 4 frames per second with autofocus. I mean, it was just really firing off great shots. It was really, really quick and responsive.
Well, Olympus makes some good cameras. If they survive the financial trouble they're in due to some fraud committed by their executives, I think they'll be just fine.
Yeah. And the thing that was nice that I hope translates out, they put a 5-axis stabilization system. So I really found that it was, as I was bending or tilting or moving with the camera, I just tried walking with it, and your typical walkabout tourist type camera, it did really well in shooting in different conditions. So I think I found something. I'd been a big fan of the Leicas previously, and I've been wanting to step up for just something smaller when I'm out traveling with family or on quick day trips to not have to necessarily lug as much of my DSLR gear around. I might have found a solution. Now, you posted a couple of new tips on the 5D Mark III, and we're starting to see this camera ship in volume now. People are easily getting it. What are some things that have continued to surprise you about this camera that you like?
It's just rock solid, Rich. I mean, it's just an amazing piece of gear. I'm thinking it's the best $3,500 camera body out there. I'll talk just briefly because I already covered some of the stuff on Photofocus. I'll talk about something I didn't cover on Photofocus on the site is that I tried the in-camera HDR, and you know what? It does a pretty good job.
Yeah. No, I did the same thing on the EM5. It didn't have in-camera HDR, but it had in-camera cross-processing and some filters that were pretty amazing. And on the D800, I did in-camera time-lapse, and I'm like, well, I'd still like the benefit of doing it in post, but for a test shot or just to play and have it immediately, I was like, this is good. It's amazing what they're doing. It's sort of like the camera manufacturers are saying, oh, well, why do you have to do that in post-processing on a separate computer? Computers have gotten small enough and fast enough. We'll just put it right in the camera itself.
Yeah, we're going to see a lot of this kind of stuff going forward, and people will attack it until they try it, and then they'll go, "Hey, that wasn't too bad." I got to tell you, if you're a 5D Mark II camera owner and you can afford it, run down there and buy a 5D Mark III. That camera it's right now in the running to win Camera of the Year at Photofocus, unless something better comes out. And of course, that something better could be about 3 to 4 weeks away. I have my 1DX on order, and I've held it in my hand, and you videotaped me doing it. So I'm very excited about the 1DX. It has the same autofocus as the 5D Mark III, with the exception of it has an additional digic processor that's dedicated strictly to the AF and the meter.
Well, let's hold off and talk more about that in a second, but you should actually mention a couple of the sponsors that bring us a show, and maybe a way that people could actually rent cameras to try them out before they buy.
That's a snappy segue. If you can't afford these cameras, they're all available at borrowlenses.com. Not only the cameras, but the lenses. Not only the cameras and lenses, but the tripods and the sliders, whether it's video or audio. They're heavy in the video now, Rich. They've got every single camera lens, I believe, that's available for a DSLR, with the exception of the kit lenses, since everybody's already got those. And they've got them in multiples. They provided me with the 7 flashes I took from Canon, the 7 Canon flashes. I wasn't about to buy 7 Canon flashes for one shoot, so I got them from Borrow Lenses. So check them out. They're borrowlenses.com. There's a banner on our homepage at photofocus.com. Also, like to mention, if you want to buy this gear, we've got an Amazon site there called the DSLR Store. You can click through there and support Photofocus by buying your gear on Amazon. The prices are extremely competitive, and I highly recommend Amazon Prime, baby, because then you can abuse them. You can buy a $2 item and make it ship it to you 2 days. It's kind of fun.
I do feel occasionally a little guilty on the Amazon Prime stuff when all the shipping things, but I must admit it is a great way to get stuff when you need it, and especially you whip out the phone, you just do the impulse buy. So sounds like we should definitely check out the digital SLR store. Now back to the Canon 5D and the 1D. When we were at NAB, we had a chance to look at these. One of the things that torqued me a little bit, and this is a video thing, but that, when we talked to Chuck Westfall, specifically said, no, we're drawing a line in the sand. These cameras are going to have certain limitations on the video side, and if you want those, you have to step up to here. So I know a lot of people, are interested in the 5D Mark III and are interested in the 1D. Canon seems to be segmenting out its video line and photography line, drawing some lines between them that they were starting to have some collisions. Any comment on that? I mean, I know that you seem quite happy with the video. You've used it on some projects already.
Well, Rich, okay, but let's be honest. There's the rest of us, and then there's you. I mean, you're in the video production business, and you need stuff that 99% of our audience has never even heard of. They couldn't care less. The video coming out of the 5D Mark III for the average person, particularly when paired with the brand new CS6 that has video editing capabilities for normal people.
Yes, I like them too.
is more than enough and is fine. Now, I think it's a good business decision to say, hey, if you really want to go crazy, get the C300. I've got one on order, by the way. I mean, there are certain things that camera companies have done this for years. They cripple models on purpose so that you'll buy the more expensive one to do this or that. And, let's face it, the 5D Mark III is still basically a still camera. So I think it does great for video. They've enhanced the video stuff. But, for guys like you and Alex Lindsay that live in the video world, I'm sure it's not good enough. But that's why they've got Reds and C300s and all kinds of other cool cameras.
Well, I know that, they're not on your favorite list, but I must say when I got a chance at NAB to look at the Scarlett, there were things that were jumping out about it that looked pretty good. The price point is not that much higher than a DSLR, and the concept of raw video is really starting to sound appealing. We're starting to hear more and more happening with raw. Other things we're seeing is that more raw formats popping up out there. So I did notice that just this past week, Adobe issued an update to Camera Raw, and Apple also put out a recent update to add more cameras. So if you haven't fired up your computer and told it to check the internet, make sure you see that some of your software is up to date, because a lot of these new cameras do require software updates. To that end, some of these newest cameras will only work with CS6. So those of you, or Lightroom 4, same sort of thing we're seeing on the Apple side, needing to update and making sure you're on the current version. So if you are looking at some of these new cameras, I guess my piece of advice is budget for a software update as well. And this is where you could make fun of the giant 40 megabyte raw files of the D800 I've been playing with, but it's okay.
Yeah. You know how you can tell the difference between a D800 owner and a 5D Mark III owner?
One has a chiropractor who follows him around?
Well, that and a big, giant, wagon full of hard drives and compact flash cards that store all those huge files on.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
So, other things that stood out on the Canon 5D Mark III, anything that people might have missed in your early review?
No, I think we got enough. Let's move on.
Okay. So coming up, we got a couple of educational opportunities that people should know about. You're going to be speaking at the Google Plus Photographers Conference real soon, right?
No, I'm not going to be speaking.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm going to simply be attending, and that's my favorite thing about it.
No work, all the fun.
This may be the first workshop in 15 years I've attended where I'm going as a student. I need to learn more about Google Plus. I'm happy to say that I don't know everything. I mean, Twitter, I think I got that handled, but Google Plus, I want to find out what I can learn. Some of the best minds are in the business. I'm not speaking. I'm just hanging out. I'm going. It'll be May 22nd, 23rd. All of our friends are going to be there. You should be too if you can get there. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. There's lots of opportunities to shoot. San Francisco is a beautiful city. They happen to have it at Yerba Buena Park, which I used to live in San Francisco. That's my favorite city park in the world. And I've been around the world, so I can tell you this is one of the nicest city parks in the world. And that's the basis of all this. And it's only a $10 cab ride from Tommy Toys. Talking Chinese food, baby.
So it looked like a great conference. Tons of great photographers giving classes and a nice emphasis on social media, using the Google tool set to share photos, interact with the community. So that looks great. I am bummed that I'm missing it, but I'm actually going to the Input conference over in Israel. So I'm speaking and teaching photography in Israel at the exact same time. They had me booked before the Google conference was even announced. So for those of you who maybe listen from abroad, I will be in Tel Aviv from May 22nd to 24th and hope to catch up with some of you there. I've never had a chance to photograph in Israel, so I'm really looking forward to that trip. Now, other conferences, we got Photoshop World just around the corner. I saw that they have a contest. Register for Photoshop World and get entered to win the whole copy of CS6. And I think this is actually a good time to mention that one of our sponsors is Kelby Training. In fact, I just had 2 brand new classes come out on their website last week. If you're into DSLR or DSLR video or Premiere Pro editing, those just came out. So, Scott, we've got a good offer for folks over at Kelby Training.
Yeah, you got to go to photofocus.com and use the code, which is on the website. I'm going to make you go look it up, but that'll get you $20 off a year subscription. It's worth it. Also want to take time to thank SmugMug, the very best place to host your photos, particularly if you want to sell them or if you've got video you want to host uncompressed. SmugMug has all kinds of stuff. They are a very powerful site. They are working on making it a little bit more user-friendly, but they have the most options in terms of configuring your website for showing your work. So check out SmugMug. That's happening. And in terms of conferences, Rich, I also want to mention that I am speaking at Skip Summer School in Chicago in August. That's going to be a fun boutique conference, 200 or 300 people there. You're going to get a chance to sit in front of about, I don't know, I think there's like 15 different instructors, all top names, some of the same people that are going to be at Google Plus, but there'll be hands-on shooting twice for everybody in that particular conference. Find out about that at MEI500.com.
Very cool. So one more story to take us to the end today, and that is that the Copyright Office in the U.S. is changing its fee structure. So they are trying to make a little more money because the government seems to need it these days. And so what they've done is they are taking the online registration from $35 to $65. And if you still haven't figured out how to use a computer, they're taking the paper applications from 65 to 100. So how's this going to impact, some of the folks who are registering their work, Scott? I know that you've been evaluating copyright versus some of the Creative Commons licenses coming up. What's your thoughts here? Is this going to hurt people?
Let me jump in there and correct you. The copyright and creative license and Creative Commons they're not in any way different. I mean, you still have to register copyrights to enforce a Creative Commons license. All it's do is make it more expensive. But if you do bulk registrations, it's not that big a deal. And I highly recommend that people do bulk registrations.
And explain that really quickly for folks who aren't familiar. You don't necessarily have to pay $65 for every single photo you're registering.
The way we do it, we put a bunch of pages on a website that we don't publish, but the URL is available to the Library of Congress, and then we just register that website with like 1,000 images, and it's inconvenient, it's more expensive, but frankly I'm glad they're doing it. Here's why. I've been to the Library of Congress, I've been to the office where they process copyright applications, and I'm telling you, it's literally stuff falling through the cracks. There's all these old wooden school desks, and you literally see applications falling through the cracks between the desks. And it's been taking forever to get registration certificates back. Months and months and months and months and months. So if this fee increase makes it easier for them to do the job properly, I'm all for it. But just do the bulk registrations, folks. But you do need to register if you want to protect yourself. If you're using Creative Commons, that's great. I'm testing that right now. But if someone violates that Creative Commons license, you still revert back to the only real defense you have, which is copyright violation and filing suit in the United States District Court. So you've got to register, you got to register, you got to register. There's tons of information about this at Kelby Training, also at asmp.org, and at
one of my
copyright.gov.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of my favorite sites for general education is copyright.gov, but the ASMP has a great tutorial on the copyright process, as well as just sort of a free online class you can watch to fill that in. And the classes over at Kelby Training on the copyright topic are very well done. So Jack Resnicki does a great job on those. All right, Scott, anything else you want to share with folks today before we take it out?
I do want to mention one last sponsor, ViewBug. Viewbug.com is the place to go to hold photo contest, to participate in photo contest, to vote in photo contest. It's really cool. And we have.
So they're about photo contests then.
That's what they do. And we have a $10,000 Photofocus /ViewBug contest going on. Just go on to Google and search Photofocus ViewBug photo contest. We got $10,000 worth of prizes, no entry fees. We don't take your copyrights. No reason not to enter. 7,000 people already have, by the way.
That's great. I know I got a couple of my books in there, and actually a private consultation session for a Photoshop tutorial if you guys would like. So there's lots of great prizes. I'm ineligible to win, but I'm looking at the things in the prize list, and there's things in there I would like. So it's one of the best contests I've seen, Scott. You've done a great job putting that together. So,
and we have the first set of semifinalists are about to be announced in the next few days.
Oh, excellent. And so is that going to be over at photofocus.com?
Yep, that'll be on photofocus.com and at ViewBug. And then once all the semifinalists are announced, then a group of professional photographers will assist me in picking the winner, and the winner will get more than $10,000 worth of stuff. And we're still getting sponsors jumping on and throwing stuff in the pool, too. So if you're a sponsor listening and you want to add something to be included in the contest prize bucket, be sure to get in touch with us, photofocus@me.com.
Great. Well, Scott, obviously we've talked a lot about the Photofocus website. Where are some other places that people can get in touch with you if they want to learn more or just to follow what you're doing on social media?
Easiest thing to do is follow me at Twitter, Scott Bourne, and plus.ly Scott Bourne or something like that on Google Plus. That's why I'm going to the Google Plus conference. I need to learn more about that. But
when you figure it out, you tell me, because I'm still trying to figure that one out myself.
And where can they find you, Rich?
Sure. I am at Richard Harrington Blog, and my Twitter handle is RedPixel, RedPixel. And of course, we also have all sorts of stuff over at the Photofocus website, and we've got some fresh Photoshop tutorials coming over there as well. All right, Scott, thanks again for joining me this week. And if any of you have any questions or suggestions for the show, we'd love to hear them. We welcome topic suggestions, and we'll try to get them into a future episode. For Photofocus, my name's Rich Harrington, and thanks for joining us.